We're live as I'm scratching my ear. All right.
So disgusting.
Welcome to Funny
Blue.com.
Pizza. Yeah,
Oh, no,
please
that's
check
for
out
the
our
tag.
website,
Crap it.
funnybluepizza.com. Okay, don't talk over me, Kevin. Don't.
Sorry.
What are you doing? Don't
Sorry.
talk over me.
Sorry, I did get your memo of things not to do anymore, and that was in there several times. I apologize.
So go to our website,
Blue.com.
funnybluepizza.com. There you go.
Dang it.
Well, tighter,
I can't push buttons and do the same. There we go. Right there.
Oh, there we go.
We paid a lot of money for that.
You can actually leave a voicemail for us.
That's right.
Just be kind. Don't be mean. Be kind. But leave a voicemail, and if we like it a lot, we might even play it. So, have we gotten any voicemails yet, Kevin? Don't answer that. Okay. So we're just going to jump right into it. So this is Kevin Colby. I'm Christopher Sean Shaw.
Yes.
And Kevin comes from a radio and TV background. I come from an acting and filmmaking background. And so we talk entertainment stuff. And every once in a while, we're going to have interviews. And so today we are interviewing the one and only Thor Ramsey. There he is. How are your chips, Thor? He thought he was going to take another one in while we were bantering. And I tricked him.
I figured it's taking you guys so long to talk, going back and forth. I figured I'd have time to finish my whole lunch. But
welcome to Funny Blue Pizza, Thor.
So what's the deal with the title? Have you explained that already? Did I miss that episode?
Yeah, that was episode 1, but we will briefly.
In addition to all the others?
It was very emotional.
Oh, I'm sorry. I talked over you. I'm so sorry, Christopher.
Oh,
there's going to be a lot of that this interview.
I'm used to that. I'm used to Thor talking over me.
It's like, wow, now he's giving memos to his friends. Don't talk over me. Okay, I didn't get that memo at the beginning of our relationship, so it's a disaster. Anyway, so Funny Blue Pizza, what's the background?
So we spent about 90 minutes trying to come up with a title. We came up with some really fun ones. We came up with some fun ones, and they were taken or whatever. And so Kevin was just like, let's just do this. What's your favorite movie? And I said, well, I don't really have a favorite movie. All right, genre. I said, all right, comedy. And he said, what's your favorite food? Oh, that's easy, pizza. And what's your favorite color? Blue. He's like, let's just call it Funny Blue Pizza. And it'd just be one of those names that you don't have to.
Okay.
And then because we're still sort of formulating what this thing looks like and getting our hooks and stuff, that we can change it.
So you didn't really have a theme for your podcast, which really helps when you come up with a name, actually, just for future reference.
Yeah.
So right now it's just kind of like, well, it's nonsensical, which is perfect from what I've seen so far.
It gives us an out.
So what are you up to, Thor? What's happening in your world lately?
Well, I was working on the Puppets of Pigeon Forge this morning with Brad Stein.
Nice.
So got 49 pages written of that. First screenplay I've ever actually. Well, I got paid for Church People, the screenplay, but this is the first time I'm being paid before I write a screenplay. Yeah. Everything else you do, it's called spec. You write on spec. You write it hoping somebody will produce it and love it and all that stuff. So, so we had spent a couple hours this morning on a competing audio. What do you call these platforms?
Streaming.
You guys are on StreamYard, Streamline,
StreamYard.
Yeah, Junkyard, StreamYard, and then we were on Zoom, which is easier to remember, but
one word.
It's shorter.
One word and shorter. Yeah. So we spent a couple hours on Zoom. So that's what I've been up to there.
Nice.
In addition to writing, collaborating with 3 other people on 3 other screenplays.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because you made a point last year to do something that you hadn't done in quite a long time, and it worked out really well. So walk people through what you did last year in January. You were like, I'm just going to reconnect with people and see where it goes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're talking about with well, it started really with Wes Halula. So after I did 30 drafts on my own, and still think some of those are the best. But anyway, Wes Halula came on board the Church People production team, and we went to Steven saying, it's really not a comedy anymore. This final draft is not a comedy. Let us at least punch it up. So Steven gave us the go-ahead, and Wes and I literally spent a month together, probably 8 hours a day, working on the final draft of Church People, and it was a great experience.
I was there for some of that.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were there when we had treats. So
anyway, you were saying that was a good experience.
It was a great experience, and then I had right before COVID hit. I think it was right before COVID. Well, don't get me on timelines, but I had, I have these 3 friends, and we used to talk literally. Well, Leland Clausen, who's a great friend of mine, and then Bone Hampton, we used to talk 2 or 3 times a week, if not daily, and it was that kind of friendship. And that's when I was doing stand-up full time, and so you had this. Men tend to build their relationships around their, what they do. If I just talked to, it's like if it was about feelings, then I would just call Christopher. But we were based our relationship on something we did, and so once I got into other things and started moving other directions, we didn't talk as often because you're just in different wheelhouses, so to speak. Is that the right term now? Is that a hip term? Wheelhouse? I've heard somebody say that on Netflix, so I thought I'd use it. But yeah, so I wanted to reconnect with these guys because we weren't talking, 2 or 3 times a week anymore, and they'd been good friends for for over a decade. And so I called them all. The first of this was COVID had hit because it was a Zoom thing. So anyway, I'm just sitting here thinking through it myself, but because I tried to reconnect with them a year before on the phone and just said I was going to call monthly, and then something happened. And I don't remember if there was a sickness or something happened that prevented that. But anyway, we had a Zoom meeting together, and I said, let's do a project together. Like, let's write a screenplay together. There are literally 4 of us, which is generally not, I wouldn't recommend that to write a screenplay, but we were 4 friends, and it was Darren Streblow, Leland Clausen, Bone Hampton, and myself. And they said, we've and Leland and Darren and I toured together years ago. We did a thing called the Pure Comedy Tour, and we actually used to do a radio. I think it was a 2-minute or a minute or 2 minute. It was either 60 seconds or 2 minute. Darren's background is radio, so he did this. We did a pure comedy minute or something like that, but it was segments from our stand-up acts, and every week we'd have to write new material, and we'd have to record every week and send it in. It was really cumbersome, but but it was had we kept at it, it would have been a really smart thing to do. But as comedians tend to be, it's like, this is a lot of work. That's why I'm a comedian, because I just want to show up at 8:00 tonight or 7:00 and speak for an hour, and I'm done. But anyway, so let's do something together. Let's write a screenplay together. So we basically treated it. We started it like you'd treat like Survivor. We all every week, and Darren used some of the stuff he learned in college in some sort of, how to organize things class, whatever that's called. But he had a great, way to organize things. And so everyone brings their talents. And so we basically, the goal was 10, we each come the next week with 10 premises. Here's 10 premises. And then we all told our, the different premises we had, and we each chose our favorite 2 of every one. And then, so we took those favorite 2, and then we developed a little more in-depth like paragraph describing the kind of fleshing out the premise a little more. We did the same thing. We voted for our favorite of each one of those, and then we basically just kept eliminating, and just by vote, what's your favorite? And so we came down to an idea called the Piano Movers, and spent, I don't know how many Zoom sessions we had, but we only met once a week.
And it was
for a few hours.
It was about 3 months, right? And you had
probably about 3 months.
Yeah.
And we wrote a screenplay, and it was, well, it's 4 comics writing a comedy.
And you're writing, you're writing your own part, right?
And we each wrote a part for ourselves. So it was 4 friends. Every premise was 4 friends. So, whatever the premise was, we all wrote a part for ourselves. And so that's kind of how it worked. And it was really interesting because we each knew our voices, or each one, so sometimes somebody would throw a line out and we go, that doesn't actually sound like my character. That sounds more like Bones' character. So we'd give that line to, the character it sounded like. I will say I actually learned a lot stuff I probably should have known years ago in screenwriting. But what was really interesting about working with 3 friends and myself is we each brought a different voice. And we determined our character, before we started writing. And it was really interesting going, wow, just this definition of these characters really helps you write in the voice of that character. And if we'd only had that before we wrote Church People, probably would have helped things out. But
hey, show the movie you're talking about, Church People.
Yeah, Church People. This is the movie Church People, which is out on DVD now.
Yep.
I'm holding up my VHS copy. That's why it looks smaller.
Yeah.
So, and then that turned into a whole bunch of more collaborations. I mean, you were kind of a writing machine last year, and
well, I just said I wanted
to be so.
I wanted to. I don't know what. Well, there was an Oliver Stone thing. And not that I'm a big Oliver Stone fan, though. At the time, I did when Platoon came out. I thought it was a very interesting movie. I thought it was the most realistic Vietnam movie, though Stone is so incredibly political in everything he does.
Yeah.
And even Platoon's political when you watch it. But, in terms of some of his earlier work, I liked him. But I read an interview one time, and he said he really didn't know what he was doing until he was 20 screenplays in, till he'd written 20 screenplays. And I'm like, holy moly. I'm not even in double digits yet. So I was just trying to get to double digits, and which I'm in double digits now. So I decided at the first of the years, it's like, I really enjoyed collaborating with Wes, and I really enjoyed collaborating with my, 3 good friends. And I thought it was a great experience that each one of us had. It kept us in contact with each other. And then the goal is, if we can get this thing made, what a great, kind of bow on our bow. That's not the right term. I don't know what I'm looking for, but kind of the pinnacle of our friendship in one sense. Something to always remember. What a great memento of our friendship.
Yeah,
put it that way. And I hope, because it's a funny movie. I mean, it's 4 comics, and it ended up being funny. I was like,
we did a Zoom table read, and it went really well.
This is the funniest thing I've ever worked on, guys, and we really enjoyed it. And we weren't trying to make a political statement, but it's a really small cast. It's just the 4 of us and a few other characters, but there's probably about 8 to 10 characters overall in the movie, but they're all men. The entire movie is male dominated. So I'm like, I'm gonna, after we realized that, I'm like, now I'm keeping it, because now I'm just doing it because I'm so tired of the 105-pound woman on Netflix who's beating everybody, kicking everyone's butt. I'm like, not that there's not a 105-pound woman out there that can't kick my butt, but come on. It's just, we live in such a denial of reality, and a denial of everyone jumps on they jump, what's the term? When you're virtue signaling bandwagon.
Yeah.
And at least I do. I really push back when you push something down my throat.
Yeah.
You know, I really push back. And so this is not a political movie at all, except for that part. Except for that, it's just very subtle, very subtle.
It was
It's like,
unintentional. It was
it's
unintentional.
it was unintentional until we noticed there were only men, and then it was like, we're not putting a woman in this film now. It was like halfway through, it was like, there's no women. It's no more women, and they're not allowed in this film. It's a comedy. Yeah, that was I was pushed. That was a sexist pushback because you're not supposed to say stuff like that right now. Anyway, so
Well, I can't
and
wait
as a
till
comic,
it debuts.
well,
on
as a
Lifetime.
comedian, you know, part of being a comedian, and I started in the secular realm, was you're supposed to say what everyone else is afraid. You're supposed to say what everyone's thinking, but is afraid to say. That's kind of the role of comedy in culture in one sense. And now we live in a culture that wants to cancel comedians for doing their job, which, you know, I'm like, I can't get my mind around the moral indignation of a culture that can't point to the source of the morality. Anyway, that's a whole nother issue. But yeah, so it's not a political movie, but it is a funny movie. I hope it gets made. But after
funny.
working with them, working with Wes, working with those four guys, then I'm like, you know, I like this collaboration thing. It's fun. It's really, because I feel like one of my strengths, other than just, you know, talking and talking and talking, if that can be construed as a strength at all, I guess if you're doing a marathon and there's talking involved, then I'm your guy. But it's the repartee, it's the back and forth. And I feel like that is one of my, I mean, at one point in my stand-up career, I got so bored with, you know, because in stand-up, you're doing the same bits all the time. You should be writing new stuff, but you get lazy sometimes. And it's just so easy. Like, oh, I can do this blindfolded. This is great. It's wonderful. But you're so bored. You know, you're bored with like, oh, you're laughing at that again. That's fantastic. But I'm bored with the, you know, whatever's amusing you is boring the life out of me. And so I started doing segments in my act where I would just interact with the crowd. I actually had 3 segments that were scripted into my act. And like, I'm taking 5 minutes here and I'm talking to beauty college students, if there are any. And I'm taking, you know, 5 minutes here. I'm talking to parents or newly married people or whatever it happened to be that would work with an intro joke. And then I would riff, and it's called riffing if you want the technical terms. But, and that's the part of my show that people love the most, which became frustrating because, you know, it's like you work really hard on writing material and you hone it and you craft it and hours and trial and error and rejection, and it finally works. And they're like, we like that stuff you just made up or right off the cuff. Like, well, crap, you know, why don't I just do that all the time? So I ended up doing a lot of that. And so that became kind of, you know, my, you know, it becomes comedy's a craft, and then you become more skillful at it. And I feel like that is one of my skill sets is riffing. And so it's hard to riff all alone when you're writing, you know, alone a screenplay by yourself. So I really enjoyed the collaboration process. As long as I'm the one doing the typing, I will say that. If I'm doing it, if you collaborate with me, I'll be doing the typing on Zoom. And so, you know, that's kind of how it works with me. But so Christopher happened to mention Bob Smiley, and I've known Bob for years. Bob's another comedian, and but I couldn't say Bob and I were great friends. But you know, but I went ahead and called up Bob because I think he'd mentioned to Christopher that he had a idea for a screenplay that he wanted to get done, or he thought he had an idea for a screen. So I called him up and talked to him about it, and then Bob and I collaborated together and wrote a screenplay that is also funny. And then. So Bob and I finished that, and I'm like, why don't I just do, this is just one day a week. I mean, I've got 5 days in the week. I could be working on 5 screenplays during the week. So right now I'm working on collaborating with 3 other people during the week while I'm really collaborating with 4 now, because Brad and I are working on this. Brad and I have a different way of working though than the other collaborations, but still works.
Speaking of Brad and you, that was soon after you and Bob, wasn't it? You and Brad working on The Revenge of Adam and Eve, or was that a little later?
Well, it was either Brad or Darren.
Okay. Oh yeah,
But,
right. Darren Cogan. We're
Yeah,
working
that
on one
started
called
soon
the
after.
Anti-Time Traveler. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So anyway,
Brad,
he and Brad Stein collaborated on The Revenge of Adam and Eve, and it looks like prayers. It looks like it's getting optioned. To see
yeah,
if it
so
can be made.
that's great. So that's
Yeah,
so that
that's cool.
looks like it's getting optioned for a year, and then but from that collaboration came this other project. Brad knew someone who wanted to make a movie, and he had an idea of the movie he wanted to make. He had like literally a one sentence idea of this movie, and so we had a Zoom meeting, and so Brad recommended me, kind of as the lead screenwriter, kind of, and so we had some Zoom meetings, and so he was like, "Yeah, it's a." I ended up, what I did for free is I wrote a scene by scene treatment. So I did do that, so he knew exactly what the story would be, where it was going, and after that, after we did a couple revisions of that, he's like, "Yep, boom, we're good to go," and we're actually getting paid to write this screenplay, so that's fun.
and it has at least starting funds, if not full funds, because he's going to fund it. Correct?
He wants to make this thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't just want to pay us to write the screenplay that he can shop around. I mean, he's talking about, we're going to shoot this thing late summer, early fall. So I'm trying to finish the first draft end of this month, and then we'll probably go through, some revision stuff. But, right then it's just he wants to do this. So looks like we might make another film this year. So that's good.
Yeah.
And then I'm working on another project that I think I just decided I'm going to shoot this thing. I'm working on it's a small, because not every, like The Revenge of Adam and Eve, as we're writing that, we're going, there's no way we can make this ourselves.
Yeah.
There's
It's
just
a big budget.
There's too much special effects involved in that whole thing. But I love the story. It's still one of I think out of everything I've worked on, that's my favorite still.
Yeah, it's really
I think a
fun.
lot of
It's
them
really unique.
I think a lot of them are still funny, but I go, that's the most unique.
Yeah.
And that's what I like. I like the fact that it's a unique. Brad had a unique premise, and because that's how I had lunch with Brad when I was in Nashville doing something, and we got together for lunch and we're talking about stuff. I said, "So you got any ideas for movies?" And he had like
the title.
Premise.
He had the title and a premise. Yeah.
And then he told me the objection somebody had to it. And so I'm like, oh. So, and then I ended up, as I was like mulling it about, I don't know, mulling it over, I guess I would say. I had an idea for the opening of a Christian movie that I thought was really funny, but I didn't really have a movie to go with.
I think you had the idea before, because you told me about that idea before the collaboration with Brad. You said, I had this funny line that would.
Oh yeah, so I had it, but I didn't connect. So as I'm mulling over Brad's idea, all of a sudden, I'm like, peanut butter, chocolate, they go together. So I'm like, once I put them together, and I couldn't get a hold of Brad, so I just literally was like, I mapped it out and just started writing.
He got so excited about this script. I mean, he was excited.
I think
he wasn't talking to Brad, but he just kept writing and writing.
I think I literally wrote the first draft in about 7 days. Wow. And then I finally got a hold of Brad and I go, "Hey, I hope you don't mind, but I took your idea. I wrote a screenplay. So why don't we collaborate on this?" And then we went over it together line by line.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how Brad and I collaborate. I'll do a lot of the upfront writing, and then we just, we read through it and we'll go through it line by line. And then he always comes, and that's the great thing about collaboration. He'll, like today, I read the 49 pages that were already written. And then, because he already knows a story, he knows, he was there for the whole treatment process and everything. And I came up with some really great suggestions in terms of a backstory about one of the characters, and it's just going to make it much richer. And that's what I find about collaboration, is it can make it much richer. And to collaborate, you do have to put your ego in check a little bit, because you have to let, because it's not just about you and your ideas, it's someone else's there. But I'm working on another project called The Last Bus Out of Town, which is about two singer-songwriters who meet in a bus station. And it's just a sweet little film. And I'm like, this is one of those, it's like this is on my phone now. Like, this is one of those movies, we can just make it on our phone. Let's just get it done. Let's just shoot it. So I'm thinking about taking some of the funds I'm getting from writing the Puppets of Pigeon Forge, working title.
It's a fun title.
And I'm thinking about taking the funds from that and actually let's just do this. And that's what I love about the 168, the school of thought there, where you just get some people together. And it's like, okay, we're just going to do 14 days. And, here's what you're going to get, some stipends. But it's just people who just, some people just want to make a film. Finally, It's like, let's just do something. Yeah. So it's just getting that group of people and then just shooting this thing. Yeah. So, and it's small enough, which it doesn't have a big, it doesn't have a big cast. Anyway, so I actually wrote a part for Andrew Southwick last night.
Oh, nice. He'll be glad to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to call him and let him know. So it's like, but here's the trade-off, buddy.
You're in the movie.
This film, so.
Andrew Southwick is a composer, musician. He used to be in a band called Jericho, and we actually used some of Jericho's music in Skip Listening, which was
I like Andrew. I've always liked Andrew's stuff.
Yeah.
I've always liked his stuff, and
he's a really cool guy too.
So I don't know if he can act, but I'm assuming he can just.
I guess you'll find out.
I'll find out. So I assume he can, just enough to get by, to make the role believable. So
well, Kevin, I've been asking most of the questions. What do you got?
Something I'm curious about is what's your take on faith-based movies right now? I mean, even going back, I hear a lot of folks in my circle that they're just not that good and they're ragging. I think.
What's your circle?
Well, mine's more video production, but I think a lot of it is these guys want to be filmmakers, and so therefore it's easy for them to be armchair, like, well, But I just, I think until recently, the knock was that. But I mean, what's your just overall take on faith-based?
Well, my views have changed on faith-based films, but I was always hypercritical of faith-based films. I still don't watch, to be honest. I don't watch a lot of faith-based films, and it has to do with the way they handle faith in the film for me. But I will say this about faith-based films. Number one, they're a genre of film. And so whenever you're talking about any genre, like if it's a murder mystery, somebody's got to get killed in the first 15, 20 minutes. Otherwise, you're going, what? I thought this was a murder mystery. It's 50 minutes in. There's no death. People expect a genre to hit certain points, and Christian movies are a genre. And so what do we expect in a Christian genre movie? Well, we expect, number one, we want it to represent a Christian worldview. So we want there to be some Christian characters in it. We want there to be an absence of everything that makes us struggle through secular movies, which is the graphic sex and now it's all the virtue signaling in the movies. And I think that's something we can learn that the secular culture right now doesn't really do. It's like they're doing badly. But let me come back to that. But I'll just say it right now. They're shoving their message down our throats, and we resent it.
Which even if you like the movie, of a lot of Christian films,
that's exactly it. It's like
the same complaint.
I watched, Don't Look Up, and I could enjoy it to a degree, but at the same time, I'm like, man, you guys are heavy-handed, just shoving this down our throats. And this is your big moral. I'm not saying it's not an issue, but global warming. This is it. This is where you're gonna, plant your moral flag at the top of this hill. A moral issue that really, if you examine, our predictions on these things, like remember when overpopulation was the big thing, and in the 70s, and I was like, now it's like, and people are still reciting this stuff, and it's not because they're following any kind of research or science. They're just following a narrative. They just haven't realized that the actual evidence points to, you better have some babies, kids. older kids.
Yeah, yeah.
You better have some
older married
some,
kids, not
older married kids. There you go. See, because the whole older population, it's the exact opposite narrative. And so that's what I'm saying. If you plant your flag on one of these, they're trendy moral issues, and they're given to.
Yeah.
But here, in my view, people plant their flag there because they don't require really anything moral of you. You can be the most immoral person in the world and virtue signal with global warming. And I'm not saying global warming is not an issue, folks. Anyway, but all that to say, number one, Christian films are a genre, so people expect certain things in them, and they expect it to have some sort of message that's biblically based for the most part. So you've got to hit those buttons, or so to speak, those points. And this is why a really good friend of mine would argue that in his view, Up could be considered a Christian film, and I'm like, no, it can't. Christians can enjoy Up. And they enjoy Up for many of the same reasons they can enjoy a Christian film. It's family oriented, it's clean, it's got a great, message, so to speak. But it's not a Christian film, because you can't watch Up and go, there's not a Christian character in it. There's no, you can say, it has some Christian principles, but it's not a Christian film, because Christian films are a genre. Now, in terms of, are they bad? I think in the last decade, production values have gone way up. I think the production values of Christian films now are as astounding as any film out there. As a matter of fact, I will say this about Church People, for whatever flaws it has, and I'm sure it has some, but but I will say this about Church People: the trailer for Church People, I would put up, if there's a trailer awards banquet, I would put Church People's trailer up against any trailer, secular, whatever. I would put that trailer up against any trailer. It's just a really well done. At least watch the trailer, folks. But it's a really well done trailer. So I think our production values have gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
I think what we need to get better at is the storytelling,
and not shoehorning messages into the story. Have it come.
I think a lot of times Christian movies start, and it's not that secular movies don't start this way. What message do I want to tell?
Yeah.
And I think that's the wrong way to start a story. A lot of times you find a story that is compelling to you, and within that story where there should be a Christian worldview, like I would say that, like the thing I do like about the Last Bus Out of Town script is it's not a comedy per se, though there's a lot of witty dialogue. I think there's a lot of witty dialogue in it, and that's my preference in a movie. I like witty dialogue. I'm not a screwball comedy guy for the most part, but in comedy you end up writing screwball comedy, because that's like The Piano Movers is literally a screwball comedy.
Yep.
That's really what it is, and it plays out well. It just plays out well, and it's got its heart moments and stuff. But it is not over the top. Even right now it began as a Christian time travel movie. And it's like, well, how do you write a Christian time travel? Well, you have to think about time travel theologically. And so that's what we did. We have to, in a Christian worldview, there's not going to be a multiverse, and I don't care what arguments people want to make on how, scientific they think that is. It's absolutely science fiction. And in time travel, it's just cheating. It's not even fun to me to have it's like, okay, you've got this character and he travels back and a new timeline starts, and it has nothing to do. So you don't have to worry about paradoxes in a new timeline. Like, wow, isn't that convenient? So, and in time travel movies, it's always only just, a couple people who time travel. So we thought of time travel from a standpoint that was Christian, in the sense that, well, if God is sovereign over all creation and he's outside of time, then in time travel, you really couldn't change the flow of history. You can't go, and it becomes paradoxical anyway to travel back in time to change the future. It doesn't work logically, and it becomes a real problematic paradox. So we were thinking about time travel with, and that's the hardest treatment I've ever written, because you're thinking through all these. Well, if this happens, then there's so many ifs. And
and just for clarity's sake, this one is tentatively titled "The Anti-Time Traveler." That's the movie.
Yeah, it's called The Anti-Time Traveler.
Yeah,
and but Darren Coogan, am I saying his last name right?
Darren Coogan.
Coogan. I never have to say his last name because it's just Darren. And we literally met as we started writing together. It's like Christopher. It was like a blind date. Christopher set us up. And
he was actually a producer on Wireless, which is a short film that you wrote for the 168 Alumni Project. He was a producer. He put in some money towards that, and he was actually there on set one day. And you two interacted, but you didn't remember. So
I know.
But yeah,
well, you interact on a movie set. There's a lot of people you can interact with, even on short films.
Yeah.
And it was one day, and so narcissists don't tend to remember others, but that's another issue.
You were talking about a guy named Coogan.
Oh, anyway. Yes.
Yeah, time travel.
I'm thinking he goes back in time and changes the pronunciation of his name.
He's going to pronounce. There you go. That's exactly it. But so we ended up writing. So we wrote this time travel movie from a Christian worldview, but as we wrote it, it really just turned into a funny comedy.
Yeah.
We really don't have, and so we started talking, going, we have a few connections where we can just take, because I have one screenplay that is literally just and I think the premise is sellable. I mean, I think it's a big idea movie. I think the premise is sellable, and I think the script is sellable. Yeah. But it's really just a secular movie,
right?
In terms of it's just a funny movie,
right?
And The Anti-Time Traveler is really the same way. It kind of has some Christian subtext to it, but it is not an overtly. So in terms of Christian genre film, we'd have to, if we want to sell that to the Christian market, we'd have to up the points in the Christian genre that people want, for the most part, unless that morphs over time. But in terms of, and then when people talk about Christian films are bad and Christians make bad films, I do defend that now. I push back on that now, because I'm going, the secular market makes more bad movies than we do, because there's more of them.
And
now, do they make better movies than we do? Yes, because there's more of them. They have more a greater talent pool to pull from. They have more money. You give me $30 million, I can at least make a pretty decent bad movie. I mean, I can make a bad movie that will stand up against other secular bad movies out there. And I think they make more bad movies than we do.
Yeah.
Now, can people say, well, we can make some bad movies, but we're getting better.
Yes.
And I think
I agree.
My message to Christians in the what do you call movie making, the visual arts? I don't know, but Christians who want to be in movie making, I say it to whatever Christian artist you want, any Christian artist, whether you're a musician or whatever else, you've got to have a strong theological worldview.
Yeah.
Because the arts tend to liberalize for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I tend to agree with Albert Mohler that there is an entire group in Christian entertainment who are already progressive in their thinking. They're just quiet about it because it would hurt their careers. So they're really just waiting for the right time to jump on the bandwagons. And I've toured with some people I feel like are like that on some music tours.
Yeah.
I don't want to throw all Christian musicians under the bus, but and I think that's why there's you got to have a strong theological foundation if you want to maintain your Christian identity. I mean, I think some artists just like, one of my very first script ideas back in this is literally back in like maybe 1986. I had an idea for a guy that is not a Christian, but his band gets a Christian. They have an opportunity to get a Christian record deal.
Mm.
And so they get a Christian record deal and become a big hit. Now they're touring all the Christian music festivals. And back then, now it's changed. But back then, now there was a debate about it back then. But back then, you had two schools of thought. But one school of thought still pretty much dominated. And that was Christian musicians generally would, in between a song, give a little message.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of that. There was a lot of preaching in Christian music back then, and some of it was good preaching. And so that was the pressure. But that was the premise of the movie. And I go, I think that premise, not knowing it at the time, I go, I think that premise is real. There's a truism to that premise.
Yeah.
Because I just came across this. I don't know if it was Instagram or Twitter, or must have been Twitter. But a group called the New Evangelicals. And but you can really call them old liberals, too, because that's really all it is. It's just liberalism repackaged, and that's all it is. It's like, I think the guy wanted to have a debate with who's the guy from, there's a rock band, what are they called?
Skillet?
My daughter. Skillet. There you go. Very good.
You're thinking of John Cooper.
John Cooper from Skillet. Yeah, no, see, John Cooper from Skillet is kind of, which you go back to 1986, contemporary Christian music when it was called that. He's the throwback in one sense, because he's not just Christian music, he's Christian message with his music.
Heart.
And I tend to appreciate where he's coming from.
Yeah.
As an artist, it's like he is legitimately and unashamedly Christian.
Yep. Yep. He's got a podcast. He talks about all that stuff.
Oh, so I haven't heard his podcast.
Yeah, he's got a podcast.
It's like Cooper Speaks or something like that.
Cooper, I think. Yeah. Cooper Stuff or something
Cooper
like
Stuff,
that.
Yeah.
Cooper Cup? No.
Cooper Stuff,
okay, but
Cooper.
But I think, we could do with more artists like that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because I think like this New Evangelicals were saying, what was the thing? I don't remember their point, but the line that stuck with me is, if such and such worked out, then evangelicalism owes Rob Bell an apology.
Oh.
And I'm like, and I actually, when I come across, I don't mean to do this, but I think this is called trolling. Is that what you do? I don't really know what trolling is. I'm probably guilty of it. But when I come across a new website that I go, this is provocative and interesting, I'll start scrolling through their tweets, and I'll get to an older tweet, and sometimes I just gotta respond to these things. Is that trolling?
Yeah, it can be.
Okay. Well, anyway,
it depends on the attitude behind it, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's probably sarcastic, which is probably not good. But anyway, but I did answer, no, we really don't owe Rob Bell an apology, and I quoted, I think it's 2 John, maybe it's 3 John. It's a 1-page epistle that John wrote. Basically, he's basically just saying, look, when teachers don't agree with the gospel we've given you, reject them.
Yeah.
So we don't know Rob Bell an apology. I'm waiting for the Christianity Today's next version of the Mars Hill tapes. Do one on Rob Bell. Come on. That's so. I know Driscoll was he's such a disaster for I think for people that are a little more progressive leaning. Not that Driscoll doesn't have some issues, but even now, even with all his issues, he was biblically faithful. That's what I will give Driscoll. Whereas Rob Bell, not so much. Anyway, I don't know how we got on that, but liberalism. The arts tend to liberalize.
Yeah.
So man, don't come on my set and be a secret liberal. We're gonna anyway. No, I don't know. So you get older, you stop caring, I think is what happens. There's something good to that, though,
Well, Thor, I have a question as we're wrapping up here. I wanted to ask.
Are we wrapping up?
Yeah.
Really? You guys only asked me like 2 questions.
Well, what does that say about the answers?
Do I have to make my answers shorter? Is that what you're?
Yeah, maybe.
Is that what I'm implying here?
When you forget what you're answering while you answer it and change to something completely different, then yeah, maybe.
Your answers are too long. Is that it? Okay. All right.
But and I want, of course, I want to give Kevin another shot to ask something. But I was wondering, and you can tackle this from both comedy as well as from filmmaking. What do you wish
you don't have to tell me how to answer my own questions? Okay, just so you know, Christopher, you can just ask the question.
Wait, you didn't get the memo?
You don't have to give me a multiple choice on how I can answer. We already know my answers are too long, and if you give me options while you're asking the question, everything's even getting longer now. So,
well,
anyway, what's your question?
Memo? Sorry. Yeah. So, from a comedy perspective as well as from a filmmaking perspective, what do you wish you would have known before you started?
Well, I do wish I had focus more on the voice of the different characters. That's the biggest thing.
Okay.
In screenwriting, that's the biggest thing. Voice is always the biggest thing, and distinguishing those voices. But and then making the plot point of church people 20 minutes into the film, that should have been that should have happened, and I think the film would have. Well, we're still hoping for a cult following, but you know, people generally like it.
Here's what it looks like, people.
That's it.
Show them, Thor. You're big on the screen. Show them.
So church, come on, church people. Church people. Church people. Hey, there's an ad. Buy church people. Church people.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Come on, church people. Buy church people.
All right.
That's a good one.
So that was a short answer.
And then what about if somebody's out there wanting to learn comedy or whatever, what do you wish you would have known about stand-up comedy before you started?
It's not what you know about stand-up comedy. It is the attitude you have to adopt. And you can't be afraid to be Rudy. Rudy the movie. Rudy Rutabaga.
Yeah.
Who was, just through sheer desire to be part of the Notre Dame team, walked on and if you ever see it, I love the movie Rudy, but you have to, number one, you have to have complete integrity, just right from, your perspective, and you just have to keep trying stuff out, and you can't be afraid to, let stuff die. And some of it is too, it's if you got an idea you think is funny, keep working at it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we give up too soon. I do. I like if something doesn't get a laugh for me right away, I throw it out right away. And I remember there's a comedian named Al Bell who's been on the Letterman show, like back when Letterman had a show. He was on Letterman like 5 times, but I worked with Al in Indianapolis before, and I remember the beginning of the week he was trying out this new bit. It just wasn't, but every night he came, and literally after the first night, like I would have dropped that bit from that response, but he just kept honing it every night. And I saw the improvement from day one to, after however many shows we did there, 8 to 12 shows, I saw the improvement. And so you're just going, oh man, so I learned that. I didn't really adopt that though. That's not my personality, but you do have to, it's that old, you got to develop thick skin and you've got to not be afraid to continually try out new material. Yeah. And it's hard. It's a hard process.
Even the best comedians have a horror story about a best set or the worst set.
Well, you don't get those best set unless you go what Seinfeld said once.
Yeah. And we've heard of him. I've heard that name. Yeah.
Yeah. For every 10 jokes you write, only one works. But the other thing I might do differently is I might adopt the storytelling because I was a setup punchline guy, and you get more mileage out of storytelling. And storytelling lets you develop it on stage, and I think that gives you a more original voice. Louis C.K., who I can't, commend his lifestyle or, many things about his language and different things, right. But he is a brilliant comedian, and when he just does a bit that's just a bit that's a clean bit, it's just and he's really a storyteller. But he does it in a really masterful way. And so yeah, so I might do those things differently.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Kevin, do you have any last questions?
Yeah, of all the things that you do and have done, stand up, writing, acting, I think you've done podcasts, everything. What's your most favorite of all those roles?
Oh, the writing.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm believe it or not, I'm introverted by nature. But I like the I like the craft of it. Like in stand up, I think what I struggled with in stand up, and this comes from my personality as being perfectionistic, is that the crafting of a bit was so painful because it's so imperfect and it's so and in stand up you're never done. You don't ever just go, that's I've got an entire stand-up act, I'm done. This is and even after you like, even if you're doing something to produce, to film, you film it and you're like, crap, I
wish it had been that way.
Well, you think of other lines you could have added.
Yeah.
And so in writing, you just got to hone it and hone it and hone it and hone it and hone it. Now there is a point in writing where you still have to say, okay, I have to turn it in. Right. There's always, and this is a perfectionist nightmare. There comes a place where you have to turn something in because there is no app that lets you know when something's perfect.
Oh, right.
And that's the greatest challenge is just, there's, after you turn something in, it's like, even right. So I've got a novel coming out this year. And, I literally was working on this novel for a decade, literally. It was one novel at one time. And then at one point I realized I had two different storylines. So I ended up creating two novels out of that one novel. But literally both those novels just continual. Now I will say this, it's not continual. It's like, you work on it for a period and then you get other stuff and you come back and work on it, but off and on for a decade. But there comes a point where you have to turn it in. And, after I write a while, I'm like, okay, I just finished a draft. I feel good about it. Give it a week. And then as you reread it, you're like, no, you got to change stuff. And so you're like, even after I turned the novel in, I was like, once they give me the actual book, I'm sure I'll read it and go, no.
Time to do an updated version.
You can't. Yeah. Now that is the nice thing about digital. You can change, that would be nice if you could just change a book. Someday this will exist where a person can buy a digital book and the author can actually make updates to it. And you'll just get a ping. The author has changed the text of your book. You're like, oh, I'm going to read the new version.
Dude, you could invent that and become a billionaire.
But that would be an author's dream.
And then fund all of our movies.
You could continually revise.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, the book. Yeah.
Well, Thor, thanks so much for joining us. Kevin, will you please throw up the websites? Throw up Thor's website.
I will.
Church People website. There's ThorRamsey.com if you want to learn more about Thor. He's not super active on social media, so don't take it the wrong way if he doesn't friend you back right away.
Other people on Twitter.
Well, I'll friend people back on Facebook. If you Facebook me, I friend you back. I do that. I'll do that. I haven't done it for a while.
ChurchPeopleFilm.com. Check out our movie.
Yes.
It was Thor's and my first feature film collaboration together, and it turned out well. So
be part of making Church People a cult classic.
Yeah,
we mean cult in the, of course, the biblical good sense.
Yes,
in a good way.
I'm selling flowers on the corner for Reverend Sun Moon sense. It's just, but in a good sense. They do that anymore.
And then check out our website for this podcast, funnybluepizza.com. All right, let's do it, Kevin. Funnybluepizza.com. Thank you.
See, he even wants in on our tagline.
Yeah. So make sure you go there and leave us a voice message and tell us who would you like to see us interview next. Kevin, close us out.
Well, hey, Thor, thanks for being on here. And
my pleasure.
If we do it again, try and take your time and answer the questions, please. I felt rushed the whole time. No, seriously, thank you so much. And
it's my pleasure.
Fun, so appreciate it. And we will see you guys next time.
Next time.